All right, let's jump right in. We're always being told to hustle harder, optimize everything, just do more. But what if the real secret to handling our absolutely chaotic modern lives isn't some new app or productivity hack? What if it's an idea that's thousands of years old? That's what we're going to explore today, how ancient philosophy might actually have the answers we've been searching for. I mean, does this feel familiar to you? That constant flood of information, the dings and pings from your phone, that feeling of being pulled in 100 different directions all at once, it's exhausting, right? And in the middle of all that noise, what is it that we're all really looking for? Well, it's a sense of control, a little bit of focus, the power to just reclaim our own attention and point it at the things that actually matter to us. So yeah, it's a very modern problem, for sure. But the search for a solution, well, that's going to take us way back in time, back to the thinkers of ancient Greece and Rome. Let's see what they've got for us. Okay, first things first, let's really define the problem we're up against. There's this concept from the author Cal Newport called deep work. He says the ability to focus without distraction is basically a superpower in our world today. But, and this is the key part, it's a superpower that's getting harder and harder to build. And here's the core diagnosis, which is just fascinating. The issue isn't just that distractions exist. It's that our brains have become dependent on them. We're wired for that next little hit of information. So to really get that deep focus back, we have to intentionally break that cycle. It's kind of like going to the gym for your brain. So if our minds really do need a workout, where's the gym? Well, this is where the Stoics come in. They built this incredible, practical, psychological toolkit that was designed for exactly this kind of mental training. And the absolute foundational exercise in this whole toolkit is this one, the Dichotomy of Control. Epictetus, who was a former slave who became this incredible philosopher, he called this our chief task in life. The idea is simple, but wow, is it powerful. It's just about learning to rigorously, ruthlessly separate what you can control from what you can't. And this quote just nails it. Think about it. Marcus Aurelius was the Roman emperor. He was literally the most powerful man on earth. And yet here he is, writing in his private journal that his real power isn't over armies or empires, it's over his own mind's reaction to things. If he needed that reminder, we probably do too. So, sounds pretty good, right? A clear, simple path to a stronger mind. But this is where things get really interesting. This is where our whole explainer takes a very sharp turn. What if that foundational idea, what if it's just not true? Okay, so just to be super clear, here's the basic idea again. You've got a neat, clean line. On one side are the things you control, your choices, your thoughts. On the other side is everything else. Simple. But is that line really so clean? And boom, here's the counter-argument. This comes from a really fascinating online debate where a commenter named Archie Locus just drops this bomb. He says this whole idea isn't just a simple life hack. It's a lie. His point is that our choices aren't actually made in some perfect little bubble. They're shaped by our DNA, our upbringing, our society, all things we don't control. And suddenly, that neat line gets very, very blurry. Now that critique forces us to dig a little deeper, to look at the guy who kind of started it all, Socrates. We have this image of him as a hero, a martyr for the truth. But what if the people back then, his actual neighbors, saw him as something much more dangerous? See, here's the context that changes everything. The trial of Socrates didn't happen in a time of peace and prosperity. It happened right after Athens lost a devastating war, which was followed by a bloody, terrifying dictatorship. A dictatorship led by one of Socrates' own students. All of a sudden, the official charge of corrupting the youth starts to sound a whole lot more political, doesn't it? So where does this leave us? We've got this awesome ancient tool, but then a modern critique says our control is just an illusion. And we have the story of a philosopher whose ideas may have had some seriously dangerous consequences. This brings us face to face with one of the biggest questions there is. If the world is just a long chain of cause and effect, where does our own responsibility even begin? Well, the Stoics had a pretty mind-bending answer for this, and it's called Compatibilism. Now, they were determinists. They believed that everything happens for a reason, that it's all cause and effect. But they didn't think that let us off the hook for our actions. It's a really tricky concept, so they use this brilliant little analogy to explain it. Okay, so just picture a cylinder and a cone sitting side by side on a hill. Now, they both get hit by the exact same external cause. Somebody gives them a push. But they each have something different too, their own internal nature, right? Their unique shape.
So what happens next? Well, the cylinder just rolls straight down the hill. But the cone, because of its shape, it spins and veers off in a circle. The push is what got them both moving, sure, but it was their own nature that determined how they moved.
And that, right there, was the Stoic solution. You might not control all the pushes you get from life, but you are responsible for the shape of your character. That internal nature that decides how you're going to respond. That is where your freedom and your responsibility really lives. So, after all that, where are we? We've looked at a simple tool, a really powerful critique of it, and then a super sophisticated defense. And now we can finally get to what I think is the real takeaway from this whole journey. You see, the point of all this isn't to just dig up some 2,000-year-old philosophy and treat it like a perfect checklist for modern life. That's not what these thinkers wanted. That's not what it's about. The real power, the true value here, is in the process. It's about learning from their method, learning how to question your own assumptions, how to examine your own thinking, and how to really wrestle with the biggest, messiest questions about what it means to be human. It's about learning how to think, not just what to think. And honestly, nobody embodies this better than Socrates himself. These are his last words from his trial. He's literally facing death, and he's not giving answers. He doesn't pretend to know what's going to happen. He ends with a question. He embraces the uncertainty. That is the Socratic spirit. So maybe the goal was never to find an ancient answer to a modern problem. Maybe the point is to use these incredible ancient tools to help us ask better, sharper, more honest questions about our own lives, right here, right now. So the only thing left to ask is, what question will you start with?